Views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts, callers, dial producers, guests, and panelists, and are not necessarily the staff, management, advertisers, sponsors, or ownership of DTD Media or its brands. WGMD 92.7 and 98.5, The Talk of Delmarva, Real News Talk, or Industry News Online.
Digital Interactive Friday is underway. Your anchorman, Jake Smith, with you until noon Eastern Time. It's great to have you with us. If you're watching the broadcast at realnewstalk.com, we welcome you. If you're listening via our traditional radio broadcast or on the stream, we are so pleased to have you with us this morning. My friends, we're going to talk about some international stories today. As you know, there was so much to talk about this past week. President Trump had a very, very successful week. But it just seems that those such as Gavin Newsom and others who have D's after their name weren't very happy with how President Trump conducted himself this past week. Well, tough luck.
Europeans think this is diplomacy and this will ultimately
this is
work.
Diplomacy with Donald Trump? He's a T-Rex. You mate with him or he devours you.
Trump is doing this really as a vanity project to try and add to his record another piece on the risk game board.
The president is not making a lot of sense. He wants to possess things. The island of Greenland is not a possession.
Well, President Trump had a very successful week, even though Gavin Newsom called him what you would call him, a T-Rex. However, my friends, as you know, there was a document signed this past week, and the reason that document was signed was to try to find some pathway to rebuild Gaza. And it is a board of leaders who are going to try to come to some consensus and lead, if they can, the rebuilding of Gaza. And there are, let's say, 17 nations right now in total have signed on. However, the UK has declined over concerns about Russia's involvement. Wow, they should not have then permitted the Chinese to build that new embassy in London if they're that concerned about Russia. But Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu, did not attend the ceremony in Davos, the signing. But there's no doubt that he is not very supportive of phase two. But Trump's plans to rebuild Gaza are a complete reversal of the past and will ensure that the Palestinian Authority is not involved. Does not the entire region need to be involved in order to rebuild Gaza? It's rubble right now. Let's welcome in our first panelist. Brigadier General Blaine Holt will be joining us in just a moment, but I want to welcome Ken Abramovitz, author of The Multi-Front War, Defending America from Political Islam, China, Russia, Pandemics, and Racial Strife. Ken is the founder of SaveTheWest.com. It's a website dedicated to saving Western civilization from itself. Ken, can you just give us, from your vantage point, why Israel does not like this peace board that's been formed consisting of many countries in the Middle East? What is Israel's problem with it? This is a far different approach than we've ever had before to solving the problem in Gaza and the Middle East. So what do you think is Israel's position of why they are not in favor of this?
Well, before you have a board of peace, you have to have a board of ending the war. In other words, when you're in a state of war with a bunch of countries like Qatar, Turkey, and Iran, you can't just have a board of peace with people who haven't ended their declaration of war against Israel. So I think that's probably the number one reason why Israel doesn't want to be part of this board of peace, because they're in a state of war. And those countries have not surrendered yet. Those countries have not declared that they're no longer in a state of war with Israel. So that's a big issue. A second big issue is Gaza really belongs to Israel. The people of Gaza lost their right to be in Gaza when they committed genocide on October 7th and killed 1,200 Israelis. So to me, the people of Gaza have no rights anymore. They lost those rights when they declared genocide. In a perfect world, they should all be moved out of Gaza, and Israel should take over Gaza, and Gaza should be a state or province of Israel. But that's in a perfect world. We don't live in a perfect world.
But Ken, isn't this about foreign investment in rebuilding the region? Isn't that really what this is about?
Yes, the foreigners, in particular Qatar, are saying we will rebuild Gaza. It will cost, I don't know, $50 billion to pull a number out of the air, and we'll pay for it in return for taking over Gaza. To which Israel says, but you're an enemy of ours. You're part of the what I call the Islamo-Nazi death cult. And you haven't said that you're not part of the Islamo-Nazi death cult. Why should we let you rebuild Gaza, and then we'll have to go back and invade Gaza 20 years later and have another bunch of 2,000 Israelis dead? We don't want to play that game.
All right, Ken, we appreciate you coming on this morning and giving us your perspective, which is the Israeli government's perspective, obviously, but thank you. And, this is, again, far different approach, 180 degrees from anything that's ever been conceived with respect to Gaza. But I thank you, Ken, for coming on.
It's a pleasure to be with you anytime.
All right, thank you. Let's welcome in Brigadier General Blaine Holt, U.S. Air Force retired. General Holt is a former Deputy United States Military Representative to NATO. He's also the host of the explosive podcast series, Dangerous Intellectuals. The next edition of this podcast is coming up on Monday. General Holt, we're going to talk first and foremost this morning on news that just broke, and you just alerted me to it just a little while ago. There's something very interesting politically going on in communist China. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yes, so it's great to be with you. So what we're getting from multiple sources, and this is for China nerds like myself and Gordon and others who really research this stuff, is that there's multiple reports that some of the top generals in the Central Military Commission, including the top general of the PLA, Zhang Yuxia, has been arrested. And this is the general who has been the counterbalance to Xi Jinping. He's been actually purging generals around Xi Jinping. So at its surface, if this ends up being truth, Zhang Yuxia could be faking his own purge. That's how much we're into these mafia politics that ensconce the Chinese Communist Party. But if this is true, then you might, at a retail level, say, okay, Xi Jinping is fighting back and he's regaining power and he's regaining control and he's taking out these generals. Well, no, the general left standing is another general named Jiang Shengmin. He's a political officer, not an operator, but he's also not a big Xi guy. He was actually put there by Zhang Yuxia. So what's the so what of this? Well, the so what of this is something is happening in the Chinese Communist Party at a very destabilizing pace. And what we need to be doing is really looking at and watching what's coming out of China next. What I think I see is that the elders, including Hu Jintao, have actually taken over and are rearranging deck chairs, if you will. And it seems to me that Zhang Yuxia and Liu Shunli, the other general who was arrested, may have fallen out of favor with the elders, or maybe they were gaining too much power. But you see how unstable the power structure is. What does that mean for Taiwan? Well, if you have no warfighters at the top, I have to believe that Taiwan's in much better shape this morning if all of this holds true, because there's nobody to prosecute a war. So more to come, but we have to watch the CCP and events in China very carefully over the next couple of weeks. If we don't see those generals at events in 2 weeks when the Lunar New Year, for them. Chinese New Year starts,
right?
Well, then we'll know that there is a cold, at least mildly cold, civil war going on at the very top in China.
Now, Wolf just posted a question for you, Vector. And how long can Xi Jinping last under these circumstances? Very timely question, Vector.
It is. It really is. And, again, if you just come new to this stuff and you say, oh, what's the big deal? Xi took out one of these generals who was against him. He's even more of a dictator. It's not this way. Xi has been largely ornamental on the world stage over the last year and a half. And really, it starts with him embarrassing the elder Hu Jintao at the last Congress 18 months ago. And so there has been murders, arrests, all kinds of things around the power structure in China. And now we have to see what's to come.
Well, again, I mentioned to you, and we were texting back and forth just moments ago, that it's a similar situation from Biden. He's just, an empty suit. He's got nothing there. Some people behind the scenes are running the show. Is it a similar situation, you think, with Xi Jinping this morning, General?
Yeah, I think Xi Jinping is now on a figurehead, even with these events happening, and they may continue to use a figurehead. Why is that useful? Well, it's useful because if the people who are really disgusted with the economy, the lockdowns, the social credit score, inability to eat, if that's the problem, then then they all just blame Xi Jinping and they get rid of their figurehead.
Yes, that is usually the way it goes politically, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like China's midterms.
Yeah, it's democracy with Chinese characteristics, I suppose.
Yes. Now, General, I just want to play a cut from your appearance 2 nights ago on the Greg Kelly report. Here's what you had to say.
This is a masterstroke of President Trump's. Greenland unveiling that issue at this time. He could do that at any time. He did it right before Davos, right before their big confab. And he pulled them all away from Ukraine. They immediately swarmed to Greenland with the mighty force of 35. And after 44 hours, 13 of them split because of the word tariffs. He is playing this masterfully well. He unveiled exactly what the national security strategy of the United States is today. Yes, he poked some of them. They deserved poking. But will we get Greenland? Yeah, something will happen. I think Denmark financially is going to do very well out of this, and we'll work it out. But United States security concerns will be addressed. And then I imagine that we're going to end this war with Ukraine and Russia very shortly thereafter, because the entire admin was on display there just explaining the exact same thing. They didn't miss a beat. They didn't miss a chord. Globalism is done. And sovereignty is in, and we're going to protect sovereign peoples.
General, Donald Trump strolled into Davos at the World Economic Forum and took it over. He was the man, right?
Yeah. He walked in there with a wrecking ball, turned his guys loose, and they messed up every little soiree, dinner, party, cocktail party. They just attacked that place, and you see the forlorn. I mean, even Christine Lagarde stormed out of an event that Howard Lutnick dressed her down in, and I don't mean in a good way.
Right.
And BlackRock's chairman and the WEF chairman, Larry Fink, he called off the dinner before they even could serve dessert. That's how much they're gnashing their teeth at President Trump explaining what the new American national security strategy looks like.
General, how weakened now is the European Union through all this? Because it just seems to me they look like a fractured group. Fred Merz is already saying the European Union has failed. It's done. That's the same Fred Merz who said, 17 German soldiers to Greenland last week and then took them out since he found that the tariffs were going to be slapped on them. How weak or how weakened is the European Union now prior to when President Trump arrived in Davos, do you think?
Well, it's really a sad development that these leaders of the World Economic Forum that were selected and groomed to become leaders in these countries have been massive dismal failures, rolling up civil rights, destroying economies, worshiping at the altar of climate change, destroying their security, and with this expectation that we're just going to keep writing checks for all of it as they look to Russia for a war they can't afford and would never win.
No, there's no question about it. And Wolf asks about, with respect to Greenland, is it necessary to administer all of Greenland or just have control over security to achieve U.S. strategic imperatives? I think that's exactly what Trump wanted, even though he was asking for much more, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the classic art of the deal thing. You shoot high and you come out with an outrageous statement that, Greenland's the 51st state. Just I'm gonna get it one way or another. I'm considering military action. I might do whatever. And what does it eventually distill down to in the negotiation space once they figure out, oh, America's really serious about this Greenland thing.
Right.
We're going to tear up the 1951 agreement. We're going to have unfettered military access to Greenland as much as we need. We might even invite a few NATO troops if they behave themselves. And we'll then also get some control over mineral resources that we have to have for our nation's defense. And so we'll protect ourselves from hypersonic weapons. We'll shore up our defense in the Arctic commons, and we'll also shore up our mineral base and our supply chains here at home. And so Denmark's going to do very well out of that. They're now going to be able to strengthen their own military with our weapons that they'll pay us for. But I think this is going to be the grand bargain, and it's all going to work out just fine. But what makes everybody's eyeballs bleed, at least in the opposition here at home, is that how dare you go solve these problems? If President Trump told us tomorrow, hey, I think I've got this cancer thing licked, I figured it out, they'd all just say, you just destroyed the cancer industry. What are you talking about?
Right. No, I mean, that is anything that Trump wants to do, they're against. Right. Anything that Trump is against, therefore. I mean, that is just, unfortunately, the world in which we live in. General, yes. Russia, Ukraine, Witkoff and Kushner are now in Moscow to talk to Putin. There is apparently a renewed sense of optimism that some kind of a deal is going to get done. What do you think?
I think they're on the right path to get the deal done. There's two impediments, and one you've been hearing me say like a broken record. The European leaders, as feckless and as incompetent as they are going to have to sign up for President Trump's leadership because they don't have any other ideas except more money and weapons, which they don't have. Okay, that's done. But the other impediment is the Ukrainian people themselves. They need to pressure Zelensky and their own government to end this war. They don't have a military solution in front of them. If the remaining issues are who's going to control Donbass or the non-Russian occupied parts of Donbass, well, the Russians have already said, look, if you don't want peace here, we'll go ahead and take it militarily ourselves, and then we'll negotiate with you. In other words, every step of the way, Ukraine had a better deal in the rearview mirror. At some point, they're going to have to understand the realities of military action. And then we get the best deal we can with Russia, who's not interested in rolling back war games, nor would we be if it was in our position. So Zelensky was very upset yesterday at Davos. He tried to make it look like him and Trump had a great day together. They didn't. And, you could tell because he went back up on stage for questions and answers with the moderator, and they actually came to blows verbally with each other. He was being very petulant and
he was being normal, in other words.
Well, it was worse than that. It was far worse than that. And then he got up and went back to Kiev. So let's find out what happens. I think there's a lot of turmoil in Kiev politics right now. You would ask, well, what do we do to help them? Well, anything that can help shore up defensive lines would be good, but they don't want that. What they want is offensive weapons that can tag the Russians in Russian territory, but that doesn't lead to a military outcome. It leads to a social media post. So, it's time for serious people to be serious.
General, final question, because we are unfortunately out of time. Iran, there were some ominous signs for the Iranian regime. There was some video posted on social media that Iranians were moving out of their consulate in London just the other day. There were 16 Chinese military transport aircraft that landed in Iran. Why do you think that happened? The regime has doubled down. They've got pickup trucks that have been outfitted with automatic weapons, and they're firing in the streets and so forth. Where do you think we are right now with the regime? And as our naval presence gets closer and closer to that region, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, the Iranian people are doing their best to eradicate this cancer. They certainly have the Ayatollah rattled, because when you vacate a consulate, you're vacating all of basically your top secret information, your spies, and that type of thing, because you think something bad's going to happen and there could be reprisals. You could see that if the regime falls, that around the world, you might see Iranians in consulates and embassies being locked up. So there's that. Then the other sign is the Chinese aircraft coming in. People are saying, well, what are they bringing? It's like, no, what are they taking out of Iran? Mm-hmm. So does that mean the mullahs and the Ayatollah are starting to look at optionality in terms of what do we do if we get overrun and how do we get out of here? Yeah, I think that's possible. But, this is a cancer that has lasted through many a revolution attempt. But I think this has got legs. This has got a very strong possibility. What do we want to do with our military? We want to help them a little bit. Let them lead. Let them do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that could happen, and it could happen at any moment. Brigadier General Blaine Holt, tell us about what's coming up on the next Dangerous Intellectuals episode to be released on Monday.
I got a secret guest. He's an operative. We're never going to say his name, not even on the podcast itself, but you're going to love it. This guy is an active operative, and he understands what's going on from the ground up.
And that's why you call it Dangerous Intellectuals, right?
That's exactly right. He's a smart one.
General Holt, thank you so much for coming on with us this morning. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. You're listening to and watching Your News Talk America. More of our program coming up in just a moment. Stay with us.
Views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts, callers, dial producers, guests, and panelists, and are not necessarily the staff, management, advertisers, sponsors, or ownership of DTD Media or its brands. WGMD 92.7 and 98.5, The Talk of Delmarva, Real News Talk, or Industry News Online.
My friends, so much going on with respect to law enforcement and the situation in Minnesota, which is still very much in flux. I want to welcome back to Your News Talk America, first time on Digital Interactive Friday, Chief Stephen Sund, former chief of the United States Capitol Police and a hero to many, including yours truly, Chief. It's great to have you back on the program again. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Jake. Thank you very much for having me on, and I appreciate the kind comments.
Chief, did you watch the testimony by Jack Smith yesterday? And if so, your response to his appearance, the way he responded, the way the whole hearing was conducted?
So I've watched parts of it. I was actually traveling back yesterday, so I didn't watch the whole. I think it's about 4 hours and 11 minutes. But I have it teed up on YouTube. But I've gone through and I've watched a couple of key points. So the way you said it, the way it was conducted, one, it's sad because everything up on Capitol Hill right now is just so partisan, and you can just it came out in the hearing. Absolutely, we had one side praising him, the other side, really drilling into his draconian tactics that he.
Yeah, the Democrats want him to be the next Attorney General of the United States, without question.
Yeah, I mean,
don't you think?
But it was, partisan politics was just on display right there. The big thing that I found shocking was, some of the efforts he had taken to investigate members of Congress. I've worked up on the Hill about 4.5 years, been involved in a number of speech and debate investigations when they've occurred with my investigations division. Those are very serious investigations. Every bit of information that we may review on a laptop, a person's phone, we have to sit down with a U.S. attorney, we have to sit down with a prosecutor's office and go through it piece by piece. It now appears that when Jack Smith tried to get, took his affidavits before the judge, he kind of sequestered that these were members of Congress that he was requesting this information on. I think the judge absolutely would have said, hey, time out. We've got a real concern here with speech and debate. And you're seeing that in some of the reviews he had done. He had a couple of legal analysis done. One said, hey, this could bring up a legal issue with speech and debate, but he just didn't care.
And a number of times Republicans brought up the fact that he actually goes off on a tangent on legal issues that aren't even settled law. He just makes up his own laws as he goes along. That's what it appeared to me yesterday.
Yeah, and I heard that on this morning when I was going through some of the bits where he had talked about he just really didn't care because it came up as this was specific again about the speech and debate because it hadn't gone to this type of level in court. And his response was, hey, chances are these people aren't going to get charged, so it's never going to end up court. So I'm not going to worry about it. Just completely disregard for it when there's been legal precedent. 100% agree with you.
Chief, yesterday, at one point during the hearing, a former Metropolitan Police officer by the name of Michael Fanone was briefly escorted out of the hearing because he had a tense exchange with Yvonne Raiklin, a one-time Army reservist and right-wing operative. What is the situation? Do you know anything about this former Metropolitan Police officer, Michael Fanone?
I've never, that I know of, met him in person. I was with D.C. Police for a little over 25 years. He initially was with Capitol Police for about a year, a little over a year, then went to D.C. Police. He's had a couple of outbursts like this, and there was part of the thing I watched this morning was where Troy Nels was talking, and then he kind of addressed the police officers. And Fanone kind of, it was him, under his breath, he did a cough, and then he used some expletives toward the member of Congress. That's so inappropriate. That's just, disrespectful. And,
he also flipped the middle finger on his right hand,
yeah,
too, Chief.
He should have been escorted out of there. Everyone's allowed to have their personal opinions. Him and I may not agree on ours. I think, January 6th, I blame that on Congress refusing me the National Guard in advance of January 6th. He wants to blame the president and claim it was an incited insurrection. We have our differences of opinion, but I just think that was disrespectful and didn't do his background in law any help.
Chief, yesterday there was a report that the U.S. murder rate had hit its lowest level since 1900. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, 20% drop since 2024. A couple of things. One, there's a lot more targeted law enforcement that you're seeing out there in some of the cities where this is occurring. A lot of law enforcement agencies are using more advanced technology to kind of identify crime hotspots, or using AI analysis, things like that. So I think technology may actually have something to do with it. But I also think people are starting to get involved. People are starting to say, this crime rate is out of control. And now that they feel, I think they've got some backing, out of the White House, as a law and order president, that maybe they're pushing their local prosecutors to prosecute more. I know here in Fairfax County, where I live, we've got Steve Descano, a big, liberal prosecutor, but he's getting a lot of heat about what he's failing to prosecute. So I think maybe they're, bringing up the prosecution a little bit more.
So people are finally starting to ask questions about what's going on within their own justice departments in their states and their communities, right?
That's exactly what I think. I think they're starting to get some pressure from the community because they're seeing these people being allowed to back out onto the street and be repeat offenders. The recidivists are
right?
Yeah, they're the ones that are causing all the crime. You got about 8% that are causing probably 93% of the crime.
Chief, the situation in Minnesota, I'm sure you're disgusted by what you have seen thus far. But I think it goes, these people are still being called protesters. They're not protesters. They're hired thugs, revolutionaries, in my estimation. But yesterday we saw the arrest of 3 of those involved in the invasion of a church in St. Paul, Minnesota. What were your thoughts? And apparently the Justice Department was looking for more arrest warrants. This judge, whose wife works for Keith Ellison's office, refused to issue those. Your thoughts about where we are right now with making those who invaded a church on Sunday pay for their crimes?
Again, there's usually very, very strict legal precedent, legal law that's in place regarding disrupting of churches, things like that. This should be an easy one. When you have judges that are acting as activists, it gets really concerned. There's a reason why Lady Justice is wearing a blindfold. So everyone's treated the same. You get the same type of prosecutions out of it. I think absolutely when you have people acting the way they are, I mean, I'm 100% behind First Amendment peaceful protest. You're allowed to voice your grievance. When it starts to become violent, when you're starting to disrupt religious congregations, you got to draw the line. And think about why they went in there. They went in there because they thought the pastor had some type of relationship with
ICE. Right.
This is absurd what they're doing to ICE, the way they're vilifying ICE, the threats that are increasing in ICE. ICE is being denied at restaurants. Even their dogs are being, harassed at kennels. This is getting absurd.
And it's not showing any signs of abating as yet, Chief. I mean, that is the sad part. But this judge who refused to issue a number of additional arrest warrants should have recused himself from the case. His wife works for Ellison's office.
Again, you're right. If that's the fact, and again, this is the first time I'm hearing that. If that's the fact, you're absolutely right. The judge should have recused himself. But this is the first time we've seen cases where people should have recused themselves from cases that they're hearing because of conflicts of interest. It just doesn't seem to really bother them anymore just to go ahead and hear the case.
They're political hacks. They're not judges. They're political hacks. They know that they cannot provide blind justice, that they're going to be political hacks, and they're comfortable with that because there's no accountability, Chief.
What they need to realize is when they're doing activism from the judicial bench, that's one of the most dangerous forms of activism there is, because it's a bad road we're going down. And there's precedent set in other countries over there.
Chief Stephen Sund, former chief of the United States Capitol Police. Chief, how can we monitor you on social media?
Chief Sund, S-U-N-D, I'm on X. That's probably the best place to monitor me. I don't post often, but when I do, it's going to be something really important.
Chief, and we look forward to hearing back from you on Your News Talk America. Thank you for joining the panel this morning, sir.
My pleasure, Jake. Thank you.
All right, you're watching Your News Talk America. Digital Interactive Friday continues in just a moment. Stay with us. Now, let me get to a couple of the comments that are in the Dial Lounge. Let's see here. Wolf says, very educational show today. Digital Interactive is the way to go. Thank you, Wolf. 3M says, Jake, this Fanon character said the other day, referring to ICE, it's time for the American people to organize and utilize their Second Amendment right to protect themselves from what has clearly become an unaccountable and lawless agency that's killing Americans. Well, he's not the only one. I believe that the governor of Arizona is saying the same thing, 3M. So it's not just this former police officer, Fanon. Producer Vanessa says, just follow Chief Sund. He's a serious dude. He is one serious dude, Vanessa. You are absolutely correct. 3M says, Milley and other generals lost men in the horrendous withdrawal from Afghanistan. Chief Sund protected everyone in his charge, yet Sund got stabbed in the back. Yeah, that does, unfortunately, that does happen. That the good people sometimes pay the price when they should not, 3M. You're absolutely right. However, we're waiting for Larry Behrens to join us, energy expert from Power of the Future. You've seen Larry before. He's been on the show. Larry works with Daniel Turner, the executive director of Power of the Future. But Larry's of the opinion, and I'm going to start off here talking about this, and Larry will join us hopefully momentarily, that the situation with respect to Greenland, and I think Larry's popped on. There he is. My fault, Larry. I sent Rachel the wrong link. I have two links I'm working off of this morning, and wouldn't you know it, I sent you the wrong link, but my apologies. The situation with respect to the EU, and you talked about it in your opinion piece, they have nobody to blame but themselves. They're the ones that weakened themselves and then had a war against fossil fuels, went with all this green energy, and then when they did use fossil fuels, who did they buy them from? Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, and this was, and don't worry about the link. I live unlinked all the time there. It's great to talk with you. You're absolutely right. And this is not like a 2022 development. This was not Putin invaded and we're still trying to wean ourselves off. This was as of last year. They are paying more money to the tune, I think, 3 to 4 billion euros more to Vladimir Putin than they're sending to Ukraine. And so they're literally funding both sides of the war while trying to lecture the United States. And your point on history is exactly right. It was, I think, 2019 when President Trump went to the UN, told them you need to get off foreign energy sources, and the German delegation laughed. Well, they're not laughing anymore. And so when they whine about Greenland and tariffs, it was like, you were warned by this very president to become more self-reliant, to put your energy on a more stable footing. You decided you knew better, and now this is why they don't matter nearly as much. I think the president said it in Davos much better than I could have in the op-ed, but they're still, swinging about like they're major world powers when the fact of the matter is their own decisions have made them weaker and weaker.
I mean, it appears to me that the EU, the European Union, has been significantly weakened, and Trump drove the dagger into Dracula at Davos this weekend, didn't he?
He really did.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to me all you need to do is really look at Iran, and you're asking, well, what does Iran have to do with Greenland? Well, nothing directly right now, but the fact of the matter is when the world is wondering what's going to happen to Iran, who's going to do something about Iran, who's going to be big enough to, they don't look to France, they don't look to Belgium, they don't look to the Netherlands to say, what are you guys going to do with Iran? No, they look at the most powerful nation on the face of the planet. And I got to tell you, it enrages me a bit to watch Europe talk to us like we're the stepchild of the world, but then when the dirty work and the heavy lifting needs to be done, who do they call? It is us. And so it's time we start treating them as the second-rate thinkers they are when it comes to energy, when it comes to power, both literal and geopolitical.
So, Larry, the situation in Greenland, is this a deal about security or minerals or both, in your estimation?
Yes, all of the above. Security and minerals, and also an understanding of the changing world map a little bit, right? Now, I'm sure folks have seen those maps where we see if, Russia or China, heaven forbid, decides to send ICBMs our way, a lot of those flight trajectories are over Greenland. And the easiest time, I'm no, astrophysical expert, but I've been told the easiest time to intercept those missiles is when they are at their highest point before they start descending. Well, that most of the time from those locations would be over Greenland, and that's why President Trump talks about that. And also, it's hard for me to understand why Europe doesn't think two chess moves down the road. They say, well, it's our sovereign land and we don't want you on it. Okay, without the United States, with the United States out of the picture, how strong is Europe to China and to Russia? And
well, they sent 37 soldiers to protect Greenland last weekend. Is that what they're going to send to protect them against Vladimir Putin's invasion or Xi Jinping's invasion? 37 soldiers?
Well, yeah, and that's just it. That's why I know I'm the energy guy, but that's why I bring up energy. It's like, don't lecture us on how to treat Vladimir Putin. We're the ones taking over his oil tankers while you guys are literally paying him still to stay warm this winter because you didn't think ahead on this. And so for them to lecture us and say, come meet with us, we'll tell you how it should be. Absolutely not. There is a new shift. They are at the back of the table because they have put themselves there. It didn't have to be this way, but they decided to pursue both energy and, domestic policies in general that were terrible. And so they've given themselves a seat at the back table, and now they're mad about it.
Larry Behrens is rejoining our panel, energy expert, and representing Power of the Future. He's a spokesman for Power of the Future. Larry, can we talk about Canada for a minute? And now that Canada has crawled into bed with Xi Jinping, is this about Canadian oil? Because it appears to me they have lost a big market in the United States, or they're losing it with their oil, especially with the Venezuela deal. And China needs oil; they need it badly. Is this Canada-China deal more about having a place for China to buy their oil? What do you think?
I think so. Well, first of all, folks need to know, like, when we talk about Canadian oil, it's sand oil usually, right? And that's, that was going to be processed. And that was what was supposed to go through the Keystone XL pipeline.
Right.
I think you're right. I think it is a move to say, oh, my goodness, the United States has this from Venezuela. China was getting about 4% of their oil from Venezuela. And so you take that off the map. China is looking for a new customer, but it is harder to get that oil to China. We were going to have a pipeline. It's even harder when you truck it from Canada. And so I would argue that was more of a symbolic, the Canadian Prime Minister trying to, again, show that he has strength that he really doesn't have. You can run to the arms of China, but the fact of the matter is the United States does a lot of trade with Canada, but China, if Canada were to lose trade with the United States, it would not be great for us. It would be devastating for Canada, and everybody knows that. And so I think it was really just trying to face safe. But yeah, it was. I think it was a good move by President Trump to take him off the Peace Council, because you can't cozy up to China and be on the Peace Council.
Final question for Larry Behrens. Larry, this past week, the Trump administration lifted a mining ban in Minnesota that had been slapped on by the Biden regime. And I didn't realize this until I started reading up about it. It's called the Duluth Complex, and it contains the world's largest untapped copper nickel deposit. Yeah. Why did the Biden regime stop development and the mining of this copper nickel? Because there was a canoe rental place that they wanted to protect. You're laughing, Larry, but that's the truth,
no,
right?
You're right. You're absolutely right. I was thinking it was Hunter Biden Canoe Rental Incorporated in an art gallery.
Maybe he was painting a scene of the canoe rental. But these are the types of things that the Trump administration is freeing up. Tell us how, from an energy perspective, this mining, very important, right?
It is. And it was, and this is, where I pull what's left of my hair out. This is where we get worked up about Joe Biden, who says he wanted EVs, he wanted windmills. All that takes copper. And he literally shut down this mine and said,
Great point. Made no sense.
We would rather get it from China. And so I understand that works in Canada these days, but this is a viable operation. Americans mine cleaner and better than anyone in the world. And so it is the absolute right thing to do.
Larry, thanks so much for coming on. If you want to find out more, you can go to powerthefuture.com. Larry, it's great seeing you again. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, great to see you. Thanks, and stay warm.
You too. Back after news.
Views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts, callers, dial producers, guests, and panelists, and are not necessarily the staff, management, advertisers, sponsors, or ownership of DTD Media or its brands. WGMD 92.7 and 98.5, The Talk of Delmarva, Real News Talk, or Industry News Online.
Your News Talk America Digital Interactive Friday continues, and we welcome in panelist Kerry Pickett. She's the White House correspondent at the Washington Times. Kerry's been a panelist with us before, and we welcome her back. Kerry, this past week, a tornado was launched into, touchdown in Davos, and that tornado's name was President Donald J. Trump. What a week. They never knew the globalists would hit them at the World Economic Forum, right?
Indeed. It really did seem like Donald Trump, he came in there ready to fend off a lot of criticism from the EU leaders and those who thought that he was just going to take over Greenland and tell Denmark to, I'm not worried about you. And, he had the leaders who were walking out of the room, and even leaders from his own home country. He had Gavin Newsom there to derail him. And, Gavin Newsom's own home papers were saying, hey, you can trash him as much as you want when you're in good old USA, but when you're overseas, you got to keep dirty laundry, out of there. You can't be trashing your own home, president there overseas. So still, though, what's interesting is that when Donald Trump was asked by reporters on Air Force One on the way back, what's up with this framework deal that you got going on with the Greenland? He's like, look, we now have access to mineral rights there. We're able to have our military there. We got what we wanted. And what's interesting is that some people thought, well, hold on a second. It's not like you just purchased Greenland like we were able to do with Alaska, many years ago with Seward. So didn't you lose? What about ownership? It's like, no. We got everything we wanted, into infinity. Okay.
Yeah.
And on top of that, he also created, the Board of Peace, which he can be the chairman up until as long as he wants, which I think can go way past his presidency, which is kind of interesting in and of itself. And he just disinvited Canada to be on that board.
Yeah, and Norway announced this morning, Kerry, that they have severed all diplomatic relations with Israel.
That is going to be a very interesting aspect, especially given the Abraham Accords that have been going on.
Yeah.
So, and what's been going on with Iran. So I'm curious what's going on with Norway, and I'm wondering if that was a shot back at Donald Trump, given what he has said to them with the Nobel Peace Prize.
Kerry Pickett joining us, White House correspondent for the Washington Times. Kerry, when Donald Trump goes overseas, it's never boring, is it?
Indeed.
Let me welcome in our good friend David Zere, host of Breaking Point, Real America's Voice News. David is on assignment in North Carolina right now. David, your thoughts on what President Trump was able to accomplish when the Trump tornado touched down in Davos this week?
Well, I don't think Macron has a subconjunctive hemorrhage in his eye. I think he just wore the sunglasses because he's so ashamed that his abysmal European YouGov poll numbers with a 79% disapproval rating, even worse than Keir Starmer. Listen, the French are always there when they need us. Right.
That's true. That's true. That whole situation, though, everyone thought that Macron's wife had shocked him in the eye or something. Kerry, did you think that when you saw the sunglasses?
I was reminded of the 1980s song, I wear my sunglasses at night. And then I'm going to wear my sunglasses. And I was like, what are you doing? And then I also thought, well, maybe someone punched him in the face or something.
No, Jake, that was Bill Clinton you were thinking about.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, probably. That's right. Yeah, that's true. But I think Hillary threw a dish at him or something, didn't she?
No, it was the lamp.
Oh, the lamp. It was the lamp, right. Did she ever reimburse the taxpayers for that lamp, Kerry? Do you know?
Good question. I don't know. Because, they did have some sticky fingers when they left the White House.
Yeah, I think they gave back the silverware.
Yeah, they got caught taking that out. Well, someone who never wears sunglasses when he's on Sunday Report on Newsmax is our good friend, John Glasgow. John, this has been the most incredible week. I can't imagine you're going to have time on Sunday Report to fit everything in. But from your vantage point, your analysis of what happened when the Trump tornado touched down in Davos this past week.
I actually had the pleasure of going to Switzerland. Great to be with you here, Jake.
Thanks.
I had the pleasure of going to Switzerland in November. So I got the sights and sounds of it. Beautiful country. So when Trump went in there like a tornado, I knew this guy was coming out of there with the deal. And he literally showed everybody that he has got something up his sleeve. That when he says he's going to do something, he does it. And he had the whole world on notice. He goes, you know what? I'm going to take Greenland, whether I'm going to do it the hard way or the easy way. And you know what? The art of the deal, he got it done. He played the case exactly. Why is it's important that it's for global security that the U.S. and eventually NATO was like, all right, fine, he's right. Trump's always right. He always is right, and he had to. He's done this for his entire career.
Yep.
And continue to do it. Anyway,
he just the art of the deal. People keep referring back to this art of the deal, but it is what it is. We've never had really a CEO in a position of power and leadership like this. And to get things done in a year that he has gotten done, and every one of his international trips, tell me if I'm wrong, panel, has been successful, whether it's going to Saudi Arabia and other Middle Eastern countries and settling this war, that war. He is just he is unlike any other president in modern history, in my estimation.
I just love that other people are giving him the Nobel Peace Prize.
Right. Yeah. He's not getting it. The Norwegians aren't giving it to him. Kerry, you're smiling, but.
Well, you have to remember that now, Jake, and you just referred to the art of the deal. What is specifically the art of the deal? Well, it is doing the big ask, okay? It's saying, this is what I want, okay? And
I want the world. Give me the world. Give me the world. I want the world.
I want the world. And in this case, it is, months ago, we heard from out of the blue, he says, Greenland, I want the United States to purchase you, and we are going to take your country whether you like it or not. And he was like, what? Where did this come from? All of us were like, where did this come from? Greenland? And everyone thought he was crazy. But he does the big ask, and he did this for decades back in New York with all of his big deals.
Yes, he did.
You think back to his first deal with the Commodore Hotel, and everyone was like, what? You're crazy. Yep. And then he uses his leverage against Greenland as well, or even Denmark, for that matter, as well as all the other EU countries. He says, well, if you don't go along with me and you keep on giving me all these threats, well, and guess what? I'm going to put these big tariffs against you. And they go, what? With all these other tariffs you just put against us? He goes, yes.
And what happened? What did Freddie Merz do in Germany? He pulled his 17 soldiers that he sent to protect Greenland from a United States invasion. He pulled them out. Quick, get out. We don't want those tariffs. I mean, John, you're laughing, but this is just, I have never seen foreign policy. Kerry, you're shaking your head. I've never seen foreign policy executed like this. And Senator Mark Warner from Virginia was ripping Trump. This is terrible. How could you do this? How could you treat an ally like this? Trump brings home a deal. Well, where's Mark Warner to say I was wrong, right?
Kerry? Everything. But what his predecessors didn't do, because Biden tried to get a great trade deal, failed. Obama tried to get a great trade deal with the EU, failed, because they told him, well, what are you going to do about it? You have no leverage, and told Biden, you have no leverage, Obama, you have no leverage. And then Trump comes around and says, guess what? I have leverage. And they go,
yeah. And John Glasgow, he leaves Davos with a significantly weakened European Union. Would you three agree that the EU is right now on life support, and that's because of Donald Trump? What do you think?
100.
John, let's go to you first, and then we'll go to David.
Kerry brought up a very good point that, I mean, you got to remember, New York is a tough town to begin with. And this guy built New York in one of the toughest cities in the world. And he's not like, he's going to get a deal done regardless. And the fact that he made NATO, I think he sold it to NATO, says, look, we're going to take Greenland because it's going to make you guys stronger by us having that territory and having access to stop Russia and China from taking this.
The Golden Dome, right?
You guys are irrelevant right now. The U.S. is hotter than a pistol, as he likes to say. And he had to explain it to them, like, we're going to either take this the easy way or the hard way, and it's going to benefit you on the other side. So we're going to strengthen NATO by us taking Greenland. And I think the guy finally was like, all right, he made his point. We're in.
Yeah, I mean, NATO and Trump negotiated this deal. Denmark wasn't even involved in the negotiations.
No, he's like, Denmark. I love this soundbite where he goes, Denmark is irrelevant.
David, what do you think?
I have breaking news. The Danish army is almost done with the Lego fortress they built on Greenland. It's breaking news. And
I saw David in Minneapolis. You made it out alive. I take it.
Yes,
I'm not a provocateur, and they still wanted to kill us. It was rough.
Yeah, his photog had a whiskey thrown in his face, though, at a restaurant, right?
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, we'll get back to that. My friends, we're going to take a break, but this is my favorite part of Digital Interactive Friday, our reporters panel. We'll be back with Kerry Pickett, White House correspondent for The Washington Times, John Glasgow, host of Sunday Report on Newsmax. I'm the only one in media that pronounces John Glasgow's name correctly, and that includes some of those that he works with at Newsmax. And David Zere, host of Breaking Point, Real America's Voice News. David's going to tell us what he's doing in North Carolina as well in just a minute. Your News Talk America Digital Interactive Friday continues. Stay with us. Back on Digital Interactive Friday, Your News Talk America. I'm your anchorman, Jake Smith. This is my favorite. I know I mentioned that just a moment ago, but I'm mentioning it again because it is my favorite segment in this show for the entire week. Our reporters panel, Kerry Pickett joining us, White House correspondent for The Washington Times. Yes, there is a conservative paper in this country, and it is The Washington Times, my friends. John Glasgow, host of Sunday Report on Newsmax, is joining us, and David Zere, host of Breaking Point, Real America's Voice News. That airs tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Real America's Voice News. John Glasgow, you are Canadian by birth. You're a Canadian citizen.
You're outing me right now, Jake.
Mark Carney got his head handed to him in Davos the other day by President Trump. The relationship between Canada and the United States, not good. We saw lines a mile long in Alberta last weekend for people signing petitions. They want to secede from Canada. Yep. Mark Carney is crawling into bed with Xi Jinping. As a Canadian yourself, what are your thoughts right now? What are you hearing from home, and are you concerned at this point?
I'm not concerned. I'm actually from Alberta, which is the province that wants to potentially separate from the rest of Canada. And I'll give you your viewers or listeners a little perspective here. The reason Alberta wants to separate is because they've been taken advantage of for decades, and they get taxed. They're blue collar. They're conservative. They work in the oil and gas industry. They are farmers, and they make all the money for Canada. Oil comes out of Alberta, and we sell it, and it's the biggest GDP driver of our economy. Yet we make up 25%. You've got British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. that makes up basically 25% of the parliament, the vote in Ottawa. So we have no say. So we're making all the money, and everybody in the Liberals in Ottawa are deciding how the money's spent. And they bring in a carbon tax, they bring in a tax for here, this, that, and the other, and everyone's getting taxed, and the cost of living is skyrocketing. So Albertans are like, well, it's coal, and we're the ones that are boots on the ground that have to go and do the manual labor, and you guys are spending money on the stupidest things, and we got nothing to show for it. So Albertans are pissed off, and that's why they're deciding to, do their own thing, and rightfully so, because this is not something that hasn't been raised with Justin Trudeau when he was, or even Mark Carney for that matter. So I think that actually a lot of Albertans are serious about separating and doing their own thing. Whether they become the 51st state, that's a whole different conversation. But I do think that they're at a point now where it's not this Quebec separation thing where it was all about culture and preserving the French-Canadian, way of life. This is about the dollars and cents. Albertans being ripped off.
Right. And I heard some of the interviews with some of the people who were online last week. They've obviously had it. And you're right. They think that they're sending money back to they're sending money to Ottawa, and they're not getting a return on their investment. Other people in Ottawa are calling the shots there, and they've had it. John, did I make it too simplistic?
That's exactly what it is, and it's something. It's an argument that's been raised to various prime ministers over the years, and they haven't done anything about it. In fact, our Danielle Smith, who's the premier, or the governor of Alberta,
right?
And she's a kind of America. She's an Alberta first mentality, like Trump. He went down to Mar-a-Lago. I don't remember if you remember that after he got elected, and everyone thought like this MAGA politics about Alberta first. But,
right.
And I guess to your point about trying to find other avenues of growth with making a deal with China, I guess Trump has really put Canada in a bind. They're back against the wall. Now he was really trade with Canada, with the U.S. So where do you go? You got to try to find other countries.
Well, he's obviously cuddling up with Xi Jinping, but China needs oil right now because the United States has taken their oil away from Venezuela. They got to replace that oil.
Yeah.
My guess is that Carney is thinking that China is going to buy that oil. We're running out of time, but I want to get a couple of things out to the panel here. David, Kathy Hochul and the state government in Albany and New York is all but eliminating Nicole Malliotakis's congressional seat. They're going to gerrymander basically Staten Island out of existence. Your thoughts?
She's Latino, and a lot of people don't know that. I think she's of Cuban descent. So
okay.
That the minorities, the Latinos, don't have representation in her district. That's what the courts are saying.
Oh, really?
The whole thing is bogus.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Wolf is asking you on the dial board. Any chance that Staten Island will secede and return to New Jersey? Well, that's what John Tobacco's telling everyone today. Right, John Glasgow? What do you think, David?
I don't know. They get a lot of taxes, the city and stuff from Staten Island, like Long Island, right? We would secede, but we pay 25% of the state's taxes and only get 12% back, so they may kill us first.
Yeah, I mean, as a former Long Islander, I used to say the same thing. What are we getting from Albany other than they take our money? We get nothing back. David, what's coming up on Breaking Point tomorrow, 8 o'clock Eastern Time, Real America's Voice?
Well, I've driven 1,500 miles since 2 days ago in North Carolina, Summerfield, Freedom 250 Mobile Museum kickoff tour started at the Revolution Academy. I have interviews with K through 8th graders. Sean Duffy was there. These mobile museums, 6 of them built in North Carolina, will be traversing the country up to the 250th anniversary this year. I interviewed PragerU, Hillsdale College. I'll be at Fort Bragg later with the 18th Airborne, who may get dispatched if there's an insurrection act. And then I interviewed Michael Watley, running for U.S. Senate, critical race, 1st District critical race here. With
Very much so, yes.
With Lori Buckout running against Don Davis. It's going to go red. But I got a great interview with Watley on the show also. And stay tuned, 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, Breakpoint.
David, that was very good.
That was.
8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Now, Kerry, Pickett, President Trump announced this morning that the TikTok deal is done, valued at $14 billion. Can Trump take a victory dance for saving TikTok? What do you say?
Oh, certainly. This is something that has been in the making, going way back to even when Biden was trying to figure out what to do with a TikTok, along with the Republicans who had Congress, and at that point they were simply going to just do away with it. And you had all these Americans who were saying, "Hey, look, we use TikTok for our businesses." You had all these children who were simply like loved TikTok, and you use it very often, who are addicted to a TikTok at this point. And yet Donald Trump came in and said, "Hey, look, I'm using TikTok for my campaigns."
Yes, it was very successful for him in 2024,
Absolutely.
Wasn't it?
Absolutely. And you have many politicians on both sides of the aisle who use TikTok for their campaigns. So they figured, look, we realize everyone's freaking out that TikTok is being used by the Chinese to perhaps infiltrate our devices and our computers, et cetera, et cetera. But you know what? Let's figure out a better way to how it can better benefit the United States as opposed to the Chinese, and make it safer for Americans to use. And he did just that, to the point where you have American investors and owners who now own the majority shares.
Yes, they are the majority controllers of TikTok. I believe the old company in China has 19% of the stock. Is that what you understand, Kerry?
Yeah. That's about right. And now it's an issue of making sure that the algorithm now is much safer and is something that can benefit the United States, as opposed to people feeling unsafe that the Chinese are going into our devices.
John Glasgow, tell us what's coming up on Sunday Report, 10 a.m. till noon. Go ahead.
These are called Zins. They are nicotine pouches, and I do them very often. And I am going to do a whole spot on this because Kathy Hochul is taxing the finance bros that live off of these things in New York City to pay for her $260 billion budget. She's going after Trump's Wall Street stock market growth. Keep getting rich right now on the stock market capitalism. And she's also going to raise these to 75% tax on nicotine pouches to pay for all the movies in the state. So I'm going to do a whole thing on that. We're not happy about it. She's using capitalism to pay for the socialism.
New York is not very capitalistic anymore. Again, Sunday Report on Newsmax from 10 to noon Eastern Time with your host, John Glasgow. John Glasgow, host of Sunday Report on Newsmax. Kerry Pickett, White House correspondent for the Washington Times. And David Zere, host of Breaking Point, Real America's Voice News. Great panel discussion. Thank you for coming on and spending time with us today. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. You're watching Your News Talk America. We're going to be looking into the National Education Association. That's coming up next.
Views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts, callers, dial producers, guests, and panelists, and are not necessarily the staff, management, advertisers, sponsors, or ownership of DTD Media or its brands. WGMD 92.7 and 98.5, The Talk of Delmarva, Real News Talk, or Industry News Online.
Digital Interactive Friday continues with your anchorman, Jake Smith. Based on where I'm broadcasting from here in the Mid-Atlantic, everyone's talking about snow. Well, we're not talking about snow now. We're going to talk about education, the education of our children and our grandchildren. Question for you, my friends. What does the National Education Association do with union dues that it collects from its members, from the rank and file? Well, you might be surprised. Let me play a piece of audio. This is from last July. Here it is. I got to pull this file up here, and then we'll have it on for you in just a second. So this is an audio file. And this is the real mission of the National Education Association, who should be ensuring that we have qualified teachers who are properly trained and providing the education that our children need. Let's listen to this.
One convention delegate from Texas summarized the NEA's business items by telling me the response that a friend of hers got while trying to talk to other union members about to teach reading and writing. We don't have time for that. We've got to fight Trump, her friend was told. And some of the NEA's approved business items included $3,500 to defend democracy against, quote, Trump's embrace of fascism, support for and participation in anti-Trump protests, opposition to ISIS, quote, kidnappings of student leaders. And the organization's president left no doubt about her support for DEI.
Well, again, that's a report from Fox News last July. And my friends, if the National Education Association of the 21st century is all about stopping Trump, then it's clear that we must stop the National Education Association. They are no longer a labor union. Now, one of the problems with these labor unions are that they have, well, let's put it this way, they do not have our children's best interests at heart. They are political organizations. They're hacks. Now, as you know, my wife Nancy was a teacher for over 30 years on Long Island. And she belonged to a teachers union. She had to pay union dues. That is required. It was what's considered a closed shop. She paid her union dues. They were deducted from her salary. And then she would get this teachers union newsletter. It was a newspaper that used to, or a magazine that would come maybe monthly, and I would take a look at it. And this is going back 20 years ago. I was shocked at some of the political slants, positions that this teachers union that Nancy belonged to had. Not that Nancy agreed with those positions, but she was forced to pay those union dues. Now, one of the organizations that the National Education Association was not forced, that they were donating money to, and this was information that was uncovered by the North American Values Institute, otherwise known as NAVI. Let me get okay, here we go. I've got it right here. Among the largest expenditures for the NEA was more than $3.5 million sent to Education International, a global teachers federation where NEA President Becky Pringle serves as vice president. Oh, is that interesting? The filing also details hundreds of thousands of dollars flowing to organizations backing ballot initiatives aimed at reshaping education policy and election laws in states such as Ohio, Massachusetts, Arizona, and Wisconsin. The last time I checked, 3 of those 4 states mentioned were battleground states, right? The union also reported spending $500,000 to support a campaign to end standardized testing in Massachusetts, another $500,000 to back an anti-gerrymandering amendment in Ohio, and nearly $500,000 to a progressive political consulting firm specializing in ballot initiatives and canvassing. Wow. In addition to electoral spender, the NEA paid more than $166,000 to Imagine Us LLC, a consulting firm focused on racial equity training. Tens of thousands more to groups promoting what they describe as social justice education, including curriculum materials centered on race, gender identity, and activism in K through 12 classrooms. How do you teach activism through to kindergarten children, my friends? Now, I'm waiting for our panelist to, okay, he hasn't signed on yet, so we're going to take a break on Your News Talk America. Coming back with Your News Talk America in just a moment. Stay with us.
Salute the Troops honors the memory of United States Marine Corps Corporal Eloisa Zavala, who died at the age of 20 on March 10th, 2020, while serving during U.S. Central Command operations. Corporal Zavala hailed from Sacramento, California. She died in an accident involving a medium tactical vehicle replacement truck in the United Arab Emirates. Zavala enlisted in the Corps in April of 2018. After graduating from Motor Transportation School, she was assigned to CLB-1, at Camp Pendleton in December of 2018. Her awards and decorations included a National Defense Service Medal and a Global War on Terror Service Medal. Salute the Troops honors the memory of United States Marine Corps Corporal Eloisa Zavala. If not for her commitment to defend freedom and liberty in the Corps, this nation could not, this nation would never have remained free. May this grateful nation never forget the name Corporal Eloisa Zavala, Semper Fi. For Salute the Troops, I'm Jake Smith.
Our News Talk America Digital Interactive Friday continues. Your anchorman, Jake Smith, with you. And we have our panelist with us, Josh Wiener, the Chief Strategy Officer at the North American Values Institute. We'll get back talking about this day 53 years ago when President Nixon announced the end of the Vietnam War. Josh, thanks so much for coming on this morning. I was already going through some of the expenditures from the National Education Association. I played a clip from their conference last year where they said that someone reported that their main goal is to stop Trump. This is the National Education Association. Your thoughts on the fact that this money that is being paid for union dues, teachers across the country, is winding up in some of the most radical, left-wing, anti-American organizations that there are. Your response to that?
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts are this is the only public sector union that is chartered by a congressional act of Congress, like a congressional act of 1906.
You're right.
So actually, it is chartered political spending, and that is absolutely unacceptable. So we have to ask ourselves, what was the original purpose and intention of that charter? And it certainly was not to be a political activist organization. It was to promote the profession of teaching and to promote education in the United States of America. And certainly this kind of spending is going well beyond that. I'll add $3.5 million went to an organization called Education International, which Becky Pringle, the president of the NEA, is a vice president for.
Yeah, I read that. Is that a conflict of interest, would you say, Josh?
Not only is it most likely a conflict of interest, that money is going to foreign teachers because it's a global federation of teachers.
Great point.
Right? So we're actually sending taxpayer dollars out to foreign teachers. And it's taxpayer because basically the union dues come through paychecks, and those paychecks are coming from public schools, and those public schools are funded by taxpayer dollars.
Our panelist, Josh Wiener, Chief Strategy Officer at the North American Values Institute. I believe they call themselves NAVI, N-A-V-I, correct?
That's correct, NAVI, yes.
Okay, very good. I've got a question here from one of our listener producers for you, Josh. How strongly does the NEA support the trans agenda? Good question.
It looks like there's been spending on curriculum that is oriented around gender ideology as well as pronouns, and how to talk about gender and pronouns in the classroom. Also, there was a report from Fox News today where a whistleblower who remained anonymous, and we commented on this article as well, said that this type of topic comes up in meetings along with other social justice activism, and he referred to as white supremacy as well. So it's all sort of mixed in. Yeah.
So do you think there are any teachers out there that object to their union dues going to these anti-American organizations? I know that I saw on your website that there was a teacher in New York City that was having on Martin Luther King Day, the kids were walking through the halls carrying a Palestinian flag. Am I correct?
Yeah, so there are teachers who object, and it's a difficult circumstance because there's many benefits that teachers get by being part of the union. That's the whole purpose of the union, right? So it's tough because you can withdraw yourself from that union, but you may lose some of the benefit of the representation of the union. Also, though, if you want to make change in the union, you have to be part of the union, right? So we represent, or we have talked with, and we have brought to Congress actually Jewish teachers who have experienced massive amounts of anti-Semitism at the assembly, the General Assembly, where there was actually an anti-ADL business proposition out there that was passed by the General Assembly, and a lot of anti-Semitism that happened. So these are teachers who are actually being discriminated against by their own union, but they are not leaving that union because they want to make change in the union. So it's a bit of a rock and a hard place for those teachers who don't agree with the union's activities, but need to remain there to potentially promote change.
You know, Josh, tell me if I'm wrong, that if teachers are discriminating against other teachers who happen to be Jewish, then are those teachers also practicing anti-Semitism in the classroom? Is that a fair question, do you think, to ask?
I think it is a fair question to ask, and we've done a ton of work about anti-Semitism that happens in the classroom, and it is part and parcel with anti-American types of curriculum and sentiment. So, close by to you, Philadelphia Public Schools is one of the ones that's been really in the crosshairs. They are under investigation for their curriculum and also for a pattern of anti-Semitism that's been going on for a long time. So these things are totally interrelated. They actually have a teacher that is suing for discrimination, a Title VII claim around that in Philadelphia schools. So,
wow. I have a question posted from our producer, Wolf, and it's a good one. Is there any evidence that there is foreign influence over the National Education Association?
I don't necessarily have that evidence. However, we do know that they have promoted resources that are potentially, actually are confirmed to have been associated with foreign influence. So in October, during Columbus Day, they sent out an email to their over 3 million members. That email had a litany of resources for what they were calling Indigenous Peoples Day, because they don't call it Columbus Day. And those resources included a organization that has ties to Sami Dune and the PFLP, which are both terrorist entities. So I can't say that they're directly funded, but they do promote resources from foreign entities. And I'll just give you one that's really shocking.
Please.
They also had, in one of these resources, it said Hitler was genuinely trying to avoid being pushed into the genocide option in reference to the Holocaust.
You're kidding.
Type of not kidding at all. You can find that on our K-12 extremism tracker Substack. We do reporting on this kind of stuff all the time.
Tell me what the actual difference is between the National Education Association, Ms. Pringle, and the Randy Weingarten American Federation of Teachers. Don't they pretty much dabble in the same left-wing, radical, anti-American stuff?
Absolutely. We do work in Chicago. I'm in the Chicago area, and the CTU, the Chicago Teachers Union, is a IFT-AFT chapter. And actually, our president, Stacey Gates, who's also the president of the Illinois Federation of Teachers, is an executive vice president for the American Federation of Teachers. Go figure. They dabble in this stuff extremely in Chicago, which I have firsthand experience with. They are associated with the Freedom Road Socialist Organization, which just recently sent a delegation down to Venezuela. And at that delegation, Maduro actually spoke in person, which means
I'm sure
enough for him. So yes, I mean that's about as far left as it goes, right? We're talking about a communist dictator.
And they probably treated him as somewhat of a hero, right? To them,
yeah.
Maduro?
Essentially, delegates who came back said that they promised to bring back the message of unity from Maduro, and I can only imagine that means they're coming back to people like Stacey Gates. And look, in Chicago, the teachers union, speaking of political activity, they fund the campaigns of aldermen, and 65% of the mayor of Brandon Johnson's campaign was funded by the CTU and its affiliates. So you can only think that influence reaches people like Brandon Johnson. In fact, Brandon Johnson was one of the first people to comment on Maduro being taken out of office, and of course he commented against it.
Yes, he did. Yeah. And Brandon Johnson is a Marxist. His poll numbers aren't very good, though, in Chicago, are they, Josh?
They're not. I wish I had it. It's like usually on my desk. Here it is, actually. This was from last year. It's one of my favorites. Yeah, stamp of disapproval 2016.
From the Chicago Sun-Times of all papers, right?
I think that's gone way down since then, too. So he is not very popular. However, look, like the difficulty of this is that all of they've created this situation where all of these causes, social causes, are interrelated. So when we have operations like ICE coming into Chicago, it actually galvanizes a lot of these left-wing groups, even ones that are disillusioned with Brandon Johnson, together against Donald Trump, which is a political complexity that I think is somewhat unintended from the right-wing administration, that sometimes his actions maybe cause coalitions that we don't like to see, or that we're
in other words, you inadvertently bring people together that were not together. That's what you're saying, right, Josh?
Yes, unfortunately.
Josh, final question, and the computer's going to be taking the show away from me in just a moment. But tell our parents and grandparents that are watching this show right now, tell them how important it is to get involved in their schools, at the public schools, at the local level. It is so important for you to know what's going on, whether you want to run for school board, attend school board meetings. If you could just make a plea to parents and grandparents that are watching and listening to this broadcast right now, what would you say, Josh?
Yeah, there is a network of people that we refer to as activist educators that through the educational institutions are working to basically indoctrinate children. And not only that, but it only takes one or two of them to create a culture in a school where people with good meaning end up being a part of this. So it's really important you know what's going on in your kid's classroom, ask them questions, ask to be involved in what their classwork is, because
be involved. Don't ask to be involved. Josh, I'd love to have you back on the show again in the future.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to.
Thank you so much, my friends. We'll pick it up on Monday.
Views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts, callers, dial producers, guests, and panelists, and are not necessarily the staff, management, advertisers, sponsors, or ownership of DTD Media or its brands. WGMD 92.7 and 98.5, The Talk of Delmarva, Real News Talk, or Industry News Online.